you have to take up with some degree of curiosity, or else you won't get very far, because you'll probably just get disillusioned that you can't find it. But once you really get the sense that there is value in looking, there's value in rooting it out, there's value in looking so closely at something that the perspective fundamentally changes, fundamentally shifts. Resistance. What the heck is it? It's pretty common that at some point, as we start to notice the identity structure becoming thinner or dismantling, and or boundary illusions dropping away, that we notice there's this fundamental or background sense of resistance that probably is at the heart of, or what was causing all of the suffering in the first place. Now, when we notice this, or as we notice this, we may not describe it as resistance. We may describe it as a sense of contraction. We may describe it as a stuckness. We may describe it as a fundamental no, saying no to life, no to my experience. It doesn't really matter how we describe it or what label we give it. But again, it's usually more and more obvious as there are fewer and fewer places to hide. So what is this? What is this resistance? How do we negotiate this experience? How do we get under resistance? How do we address it? How do we look more closely and dispel it, ultimately? Well, of the many aspects of awakening and realization that I talk about, this is probably one of the most tricky, most subtle. And that is because ultimately, to jump to the last chapter in the book, it's not there. There really isn't anything there. There isn't anything doing the resisting. And there's actually nothing to resist. And yet, the subjective experience of resistance, the subjective feeling of resistance, can be rather pervasive. In fact, as we take off layers of identity, there can be times when it feels like all that's left is resistance. So it's rather paradoxical, not unlike awakening and realization being paradoxical in the sense that, yes, it's already here. Yes, it is already the case. Yes, you are already awake. Yes, there already is no separate self. But if you feel like a struggling, contracted, self-defending, self-doubting ball of angst, then fat lot of good that does you to know that you're already that which you seek. So, in the same way, this is a paradox that we're investigating something, we're looking into something that we won't really find. You won't really actually find some little critter called resistance in your experience and pull it out and look at it. It's something like thought. The closer you look at thought, the closer you look at one thought, the more you realize you don't find something called a thought there. You don't actually find a structure. So, like all of the types of investigation we talk about when we look inwardly, the different types of inquiry, this is one that you have to take up with some degree of curiosity, or else you won't get very far, because you'll probably just get disillusioned that you can't find it. But once you really get the sense that there is value in looking, there's value in rooting it out, there's value in looking so closely at something that the perspective fundamentally changes, fundamentally shifts, and or a fundamental assumption or set of assumptions is dispelled in that process. So the beauty of this resistance is that you kind of always know whether it's there or not, especially after you've had some significant shifts, some shifts in identity. You can even ask yourself right now, is there resistance here at any level? And that's where I would start. Do I feel resistance? Anywhere? Am I resisting anything? And don't worry about whether you know what it is you're resisting. Don't worry about whether you can precisely define what the resistance pattern is about or even where it is. Just ask yourself if it's there. And usually you'll just get this sense that yes, it is. Or feel it. You may feel something somewhere in the body or somewhere in the vicinity of your center that just feels like, okay, yeah, there's something holding there. So that part's simple. It's actually relatively simple to just check in and see if there's resistance. And this may be on a kind of continuum, meaning sometimes it may feel very intense and heavy. Sometimes it may feel subtle, but still there. And sometimes you may not even notice it at all. So start with the question, do I feel resistance? Is there any resistance to this experience at all? Once you have that question answered and you sense it, the next thing I would do is just take a few minutes to sit with it. Almost like natural meditation in the sense that we're not trying to do anything with it. We're not trying to understand it. We're not trying to dispel it. We're not trying to explain it. We're not trying to find it. We're not trying to eradicate it. We're not trying to learn from it. We're not trying to offer it love or compassion. Don't do any of those things. Just sit with it. Be in its space. Let it be in your space for a few minutes. Maybe longer. If this feels relevant to you, it may feel like a very powerful practice, a very important practice. Stay with it. If this is the last remnant of the separate self, of ego, of separation, this may be all you need to do. You may be able to stay with this ongoing for some time, for days. Just stay with it. Now, I do want to offer one more step to this. And again, this is going to be a very simple process, but this is a very simple phenomenon we're investigating. So the third step really is, once we've sat with it, once we've recognized that there is resistance, the third step is asking, what am I resisting right now? Another way of asking the same question is, what am I avoiding right now? Another way of asking the question, what am I not accepting right now? That's going to get you right to the framework of the resistance. Try each of those questions, see which one works best for you. For me, historically, it's been much more beneficial to ask, what am I not accepting about this moment? That's been the most valuable for me. And you don't have to know anything about who you are, or you don't have to have a complex narrative about this. Just asking the question and seeing that there is some aspect of experience, usually, that you're just not accepting, or there's not acceptance for. Could be the way you feel, could be an emotion, could be how realized you are or not, could be about a person, could be about your health, it could be anything. And once you see it, that's not what you're accepting, that's what you're not accepting, then you can sit with the broader experience of resistance, the feeling of it, so the pure feeling of it, and then seeing clearly that, yes, this is what I'm resisting. I'm resisting feeling grief right now. I'm resisting feeling grief. And don't move beyond that. Stay right there with it. Stay with that experience of resistance. And then the last part, the part 3B, is once you've stayed with that for some time and sat with that, just ask yourself, am I adding any more resistance to this? Is there any additional resistance to the resistance pattern itself, to the no? And if there is, you want to incorporate that in the same way. Just feel into that. Allow that to be part of your totality of experience. And just sit with it. Just let it be what it is. Don't do anything with it. And there's usually an openness here. There may be a sense of contraction or a sense of uncomfortable sensations or something, but there's often also just this openness. Because you've invited everything in now. You've invited all the resistance in to be just what it is. It's okay that it's here. But the only way you're going to know that it's okay that it's here is to actually invite it in and be willing to see it and feel it. That's it. Those are the 3 steps. Try that, see how it goes for you. And be patient with this one. Patient, and you got to trust the process.